All right, everybody. Oh my God, man, I got a guy on the channel. I've been waiting for this guy to come on for a long time. Let me tell you something, and I don't know if he can hear me, but I think we were supposed to do it before. But you know, when you get with these Ph.D. people, they be jamming. They be on, I don't even know what a sabbatical mean. I think it mean I ain't coming to work for some time. I got some research to do, and don't call me. I think that's kind of what a sabbatical mean. I'm not saying that's in his case, but that, you know, them professors, they be they doing research. And the gentleman that is on the channel today, you're gonna really like what he got to say. Oh my God, this guy here is an expert at what he gonna talk about. He teach it, he wrote it, he write about it, he dream on it and all that other stuff. And check it out. And he one of them PhD types. He wrote the paper. They said, man, we know you ain't got to even read your paper, man. Just come on over here. You all smart and everything. You just come on over here to the PhD line. You done went through the steps and whatnot, and let's go. And he been jamming ever since. I'm excited. And check it out, my friends. There's a few things I want you to do. I want you to hit the subscribe button. It's free. It don't ask no information. It don't do nothing but let me know you like me, and I know you're watching me. And so do that, please. Hit the like button on this video, because you're going to like it a lot. Send us a message. Hey, I thought about this. I had a couple people send messages, you know, of various forms. I ain't gonna lie to you. So far, I've got no hate mail. But, you know, I mean, that might come too when I get bigger. And I'm up for that too, because how you gonna hate what I'm trying to do? So, I mean, that's how I rationalize it. How you gonna hate something and then so on and so forth. And then tell some, or hit the notifications bell. For when the videos come up, you get notified. You get a ding, a shock, your car horn goes off. One guy said he get one of the lights flicker on and off in his house. He get a tingling in his soul that there's some new information on strong inspirations. Well, we go across the world. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of South Africa, but he was born in Lagos, Nigeria? He said, I was born in a part of that city that was so poor. He said, when we had a fight, we fought naked. I said, I ain't never heard that. He said, man, I ain't lying to you. The guys took off their clothes to throw down. I said, well, now, hold on, I ain't gonna ask no more questions on that. But my man said that, okay, that's my plight at the beginning. My mom told me a few things about the importance of education, and I decided to go to college. Now he got a TV show over there. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of South Africa? I'm going international, y'all, my friends. Out of South Africa, he says, man, I lived through apartheid. He said apartheid was nothing more than Jim Crow. But you know, in America, they slanted, we thought it was worse. Same thing. He said, yeah, man, they had them colored only this, colored only that. Same concept. Did you see the one I did with the lady, and I'm coming to America on this one, out of Lower Mississippi? She made me cry, my friends. She said, I put one of them protests together. We marching down Main Street to the city hall or something like that. The white folks had heard that we was there to tear down the Confederate soldier. So they get up in the bushes and up on the rooftops with their rifles. She said, I got a call the night before from the sheriff, said there might be trouble. I said, well, how did that make you feel? She said, I had one of my Ida B. Well moments and one of my Dr. King moments where I'm not calling this off. And she didn't. Now she got a museum. Watch that video. Did you see the ones I did with the people talking about the Seminole Indians, black folks hooking up with them Indians? Man, we good looking people. We ain't gonna stay in that room too long without somebody saying something to it. I don't care if you Indian or not. And they get it on, and now they got family and lineages, and they develop that Seminole culture, so on and so forth. We got to watch the videos, because there was a war that the Seminole Indians won against America. And it's just that America was so much bigger, they said, man, we can fight as long as it takes. And the Seminoles Indians said, it ain't but so many of us. And so that went the way it went. I'm jamming here, Strong Inspiration. I got this one. This one's a big one. I know my man, he busy and I gotta go, but I gotta tell you about this with my friends. I just interviewed the former mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, the black guy. He came to be the mayor in 1972. He said, man, this is Tuskegee. We still got all them racial strifes. The white guy was running it all them years before that. I ran against him. I got death threats and all that stuff. And he won, and he lasted for 30 years. His name is Johnny Ford. Big interview for me, only in the regard. All of them were big. This one right here gonna be big with this guy. But because it happened to him. You follow me what I'm saying, my friends? It was his story. And I had heard him. He's an icon in his town, and he's 80 years old. The day we did the interview was the day after his 80th birthday. And he says, now, and today I'm out with the kids, city councilman. Y'all got to watch that video. So we ain't playing here at Strong Inspirations at all. Matter of fact, check it out. I know my man got to go, but if you all like it enough, do me a favor, everybody. Y'all can send me a love offering. Y'all watching this for free, if you're so inclined. Or do me another one, watch my movie. This is what I did. 3 years of my life in this documentary on the rise of Black business in America is streaming on Amazon. And I'm gonna give you one tidbit. There were slaves who owned businesses. They didn't tell me that in grade school. Didn't know that story. And so it's streaming on Amazon. And then I wrote this book. It's called Black Business Book. It's much like the movie, but it's got more facts. I got all the ways slaves gained their freedom. There's different scenarios in the broad picture, but some sued for it and won. They went to court, said my man ain't right. Watch that. I got one guy in here, he sued because he paid the guy and the guy didn't do it, and he was able to take him to court and win. It had paperwork that he had paid him off. So my book is on my website only, because Amazon got enough money. I'm gonna see if I can pull this off. And people are ordering it. So go to businessintheblack.net. Every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school. And I'm so confident in the book that I'll give you your money back if you read it and you learn it and you don't learn nothing new. A book with a money back guarantee. I'm excited about this gentleman being on here because he's heavy and he's taking time to come here to share this with you all. He got a backdrop with books. He done read them all. He know everything in all the books. He that good. Watch. And so do this, my friends. Understand, in my world, my favorite word is the word strong. Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to my guest today. He's a strong soul, brother. He coming on. He gonna watch this. Come on, man. Tell us your name and let's get it on. Thank you for being on Strong Inspirations.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Brother Anthony, and Strong Inspirations. And shout out to all of your viewers out there. It really is a pleasure and honor being here. I'm humbled to be here. I apologize it took so long, but I am here.
Yep.
Yo estoy aquí. It's all good. Todo bien. My name is Erik McDuffie. I'm an associate professor of African American Studies and History at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Earned my Ph.D. in 2003 with a focus on the African diaspora from New York University. Although I did my undergraduate and graduate training on the East Coast, I am very proud to claim my heritage or being raised out here in the Midwest. I was born in Detroit, raised in suburban Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm proud to say that I am the sixth generation Black Midwesterner. My family has lived out here in this region since at least the 1830s. That's on the Black side. And going back, Brother Anthony, to what you were saying earlier about the Seminoles and the very rich history of Native resistance against white settler colonialism. As I so often say, I also have Native blood. So as I often say, my people have been here for 30,000 years. So it is indeed Yes, man. Yes.
Okay, I
So
got a couple
yes,
questions about
go
you. I don't
ahead,
mean no
bro. Yes, man.
disrespect. Let me
Go
rock.
ahead.
Let's do this. Okay, you were
Let's do it.
born in Detroit.
I was born in Detroit.
You know that's where I'm at, in
Love
Detroit.
Detroit. Yep.
All right.
Great city. Love it.
And so as a result, you saw Detroit as a black town.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the one thing we got out of this. And that made me have a sense of pride
Absolutely.
that you might not get someplace else if you don't have that mayor and that kind of thing that's talking big.
Oh, brother, don't get me started. I mean, we could talk just for the next hour about Detroit, right? It's an absolutely amazing city. It's foundational to who I am. And so right quick, so my family has lived in Michigan, Detroit, Bay City, going back to the 1830s.
Really?
I hail from a family who were heavily involved in the Underground Railroad, abolitionism, civil rights, the communist left. But I should also note, and this is, and I think this is also why Detroit is such an important city. You know, of course, as you know, Detroit sits on an international border with Canada.
That's right.
My grandmother was from Toronto, and her mother was from St. Kitts in the Caribbean. So when I grew up, I always knew that I had family, as my family would say, in the islands, right? My grandmother would regularly go up to Toronto to see her mother, my great grandmother, and my grandparents. My grandfather was really big into fishing, and so it was like required. Anytime we were in Detroit, I had to go fishing with my grandfather. But my point is that he fished on Lake St. Clair, but on the Canadian side, right? Okay. So as a kid, I was born in the US, raised in the suburb of Cleveland, but I knew that my family hailed from outside the US. And I was very fortunate enough, my parents purchased a vacation home in Puerto Rico when I was young. So I spent time as a kid in Puerto Rico, right? So, so having that kind of worldview of knowing that the world is bigger than the United States.
I love it.
It brought a real kind of global, transnational, diasporic framework to me. But again, Detroit, I mean, hold it, brother. I'll say it, and I'll say this. I argue that the most radical Black people on the planet are in Detroit.
Really?
Yeah, man.
We're gonna stay on that. Well, let me divert from this to stay on you just a tad. Where's the plantation at in your family?
I'm sorry, say again?
Where's the plantation at in your family?
Well, in some ways, it's a bit complicated because on my mom's side of the family, that's a free Black family going back to at least the early 18th century.
Really?
So, so many of my ancestors on my mom's side were free. In fact, we even had an ancestor who owned at least one enslaved African during the 1840s. And again, so it's complicated, right?
Okay, how were they free? Were they up north or in the West or in Canada?
That's a great question. Yeah, so as far as I can understand, so this first ancestor was lived in the Boston area. And I mean, we're talking early 18th century, and appears in the census, and if I'm correct, appears free. And then my mom did that 23andMe thing, which I've got issues and questions about. But apparently, with her DNA, it said like early New England settlers, but also what really caught my attention said early Virginia settlers and early Virginia residents. So I'm wondering, given that we can trace an ancestor going back to early 18th century, my family, in terms of the African side, most likely has been in what became this country since the 17th century.
Really?
So that's on my mom's side. My father's side, they're from South Carolina. I didn't know that family as well as I did my mom's side of the family. But again, I mean, certainly, of course, there were, I'm sure, enslaved African people there, definitely a lot of African Cherokee mixture. But yeah, so I mean, I come from a family, one of those kind of old, and again, it's all,
sure,
loaded,
sure,
saying black
sure,
middle class, but we all know that most black middle class folks are one check away from complete,
sure.
financial disaster.
Okay, let me stop you there.
Yeah, but
When you
man,
say,
go ahead.
let me just stop you there. When you say they were free, does being free give you some advantage of some sort? Maybe you get an education earlier. Maybe you can get a skill set earlier than those who aren't. I'm sure the answer is yes, but what else does that do for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and yeah, I mean, certainly free blacks in this country and globally. There always was a population of free of free African people in enslaved societies. And in most cases, those folks really always identified with their enslaved brethren. Yes, they enjoyed a modicum of privilege, but their their status was always precarious. And so, going to another ancestor of mine, a gentleman by the name of John Hatfield, this brother was from Pennsylvania. Then he made his way to Cincinnati, and by the 1840s, 1850s, he became a fairly prominent Underground Railroad conductor. He was of mixed ancestry, like many free blacks were, but he strongly identified with black people.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you there. Let me stop you. When you say mixed, he was mixed with what?
European ancestry.
So he had a white somebody in his family.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
and when you got a white somebody, maybe that might mean you get your freedom earlier if they let you.
That's right. That in some, I mean, in some cases, formerly, white masters' families would manumit or free, their offspring. But of course, as we know, the history of slavery in this country and beyond, that there were plenty of mixed kids on plantations and farms. Everybody knew who the father was, and the father didn't care that he fathered that kid. Of course, that's true. That was true with Frederick Douglass, right? In his autobiography, his first one, he talks about how his father would come and pat him on the head, but still, Frederick Douglass was still enslaved, right? Yeah. So yeah, man. So again, brother, I do hope I'm not talking too much, but if I could just finish up the story of John Hatfield. So the brother lived in what was one of the centers of the Underground Railroad, that was Cincinnati, Ohio, located on the Ohio River, the Ohio, Kentucky, again, a very, very important spot for the Underground Railroad. And he helped to help folks, self-emancipated people, get themselves out of the South into Ohio and beyond. What's very interesting about John Hatfield is that he joined, he actually went up to Canada. Again, this Canada, Detroit connection. He lived in Amherstburg, which I'm sure I don't have to explain to you that, that historic Black Canadian town not too far from Detroit in Southwest Ontario. He went up there. He lived for a couple of years because, of course, the 1850s, a very precarious time for Black people. And, given the passage of the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, which deputized white folks up north to capture and send self-emancipated people back down south, back in the slave, or any Black person for that matter, to the South. So my ancestor went to Canada, and then dig this, brother. This is very interesting.
Yes.
So on the eve of the Civil War, his son, by the name of Charles Hatfield, if I'm correct, left this country in 1859 and migrated to Australia. Went to Australia because, and then his father joined Charles Hatfield a few months later, and my ancestor John Hatfield moved to Australia, and he did so because he said he did not want to live in a country where he could not be a full citizen, a full human being, a full man. Sadly, John Hatfield died soon after he arrived in Australia. And this is on the eve of the US Civil War. But his son, Charles Hatfield, He married, if I'm correct, an English woman, and begat.
Yeah.
But dig this, ready for this one?
Okay. Okay.
So we always knew that we had family in Australia. And about 4 years ago, my mom, who is the family genealogist,
Sure.
got in touch with the Hatfield genealogist, and we actually had a family reunion in 2018 in Dallas. It was the first time the Australian side of the family and the US based side of the family, the black side of the family, got together. So it's a trip. So like all these white folks down in Australia, right? And they thought their ancestor came from England. And no. It was
hold on, you lost me though. You lost me. You said the white folks from Australia. But you said your family went to Australia.
Yeah.
But then the white folks are the ones that came from him marrying that English woman. I got you.
But it's interesting. So they all have dark brown eyes and all this and all that.
Yeah.
And it's funny. One time, my cousin, distant cousin, whom I'm cool with, who lives in Melbourne, cousin John, he said, "Yeah, I went to the eye doctor one day, and and they did something, and the guy said, 'You've got really dark retina.'" And because it's like, well, yeah. So you see how those African genes they hang out.
So dark retina is an African trait,
or something like that. Yeah.
Really? Okay, I got you.
So when the ophthalmologist looked in my cousin's eye, they looked darker than a typical, white person or something like that. But again, But again, I think what's exciting about my family, on my mother's side of the family, on my father's side of the family, is that we are proud African descended people. We know who we are. We know that we have family from St. Kitts. We have family from Canada, from the States. And of course, sadly, we don't know where our ancestors hailed from the continent.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm proud to say I've had the privilege of visiting Africa 8 times. I intend to return this early next year. It'll be the first time in 4 years, due of course to the pandemic.
Sure. Okay, that leads to this question.
Go ahead, brother. Let's talk.
How did you get to do so good in school? And the reason why I asked, I want whoever young brothers to hear your answer. Because you a cool dude. You could have been out there fooling around. You know the story.
I did. Yes.
But you fooled around enough to not unfool around and get this education. How did all that? And does that run through your family or something?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Okay.
Now, I come from a family of preachers and teachers, folks who talk education, folks talk politics. My parents, they were both actively involved in the local. They were both actively involved in the civil rights movement at the grassroots level, right? So
in Illinois, or where are you talking about?
So my father was, pardon me, he was born in Columbia, South Carolina, and he was, and again, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm proud. Yes. He was instrumental in the 1963 protest in Columbia, South Carolina, which of course weren't nearly as large as those, say, in Birmingham, Alabama, but still, they were big. My father went to jail. The FBI followed him. He was a student leader. On my mom's side of the family in Detroit, my mom and her siblings, they all marched in the Walk to Freedom, down Woodward Avenue in the summer in July of '63, when Dr. King came to town, which of course at that time was the largest civil rights action protest march ever, but of course was eclipsed only. Again, the 1963 Walk to Freedom in Detroit, attended by Dr. King, who was at the front of the rally, that was the largest civil rights event ever at that moment. Oh yeah, brother. So like approximately 125, 150,000 people took to the streets of Detroit, and Dr. King gave an earlier version of his I Have a Dream speech, right? And then of course the August, August 63, August 22nd, marched on Washington, in which 250,000 people attended. And of course, because that event happened so soon after Detroit, the event in Detroit has often been forgotten.
Yeah, sure,
But
sure.
yeah, but
Sure.
yeah, so my parents were my my parents involved in the local NAACP, all that kind of stuff. They weren't
Okay.
so much, yeah. I mean, they didn't get involved in kind of early radical Black power, like groups like the Revolutionary Action Movement, or later like the Panthers or anything like that.
Yeah.
But still, yeah. So I came up in a household who talked politics. And if there's anything that I can say to your viewers,
Yes.
this, that you need to be conscious, cognizant of your place in the larger world. You need to be informed. You need to know history. You need to know global current events. You have to understand why, for example, right now, and I'm going to say it, right, that this whole celebration of, or honoring the Queen of England, why this is a bunch of nonsense, especially to people of African descent and formerly colonized people. You have to be able to make these kinds of connections. So, and I know I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, no, you good. You
I'll try to
good.
streamline it. Yeah. I'll try to streamline it. So for me, I mean, honestly, I wasn't a great student in school. It wasn't really until college. And what it was is that I fell in love with reading. I fell in love with Black history.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I came up in a family who talked politics. I was in Puerto Rico when Puerto Rican nationalists blew up Puerto Rican Air National Guard aircraft at the tarmac at San Juan International Airport. And I asked my dad, why did they do it? And my father said, well, because there are people on the island who are not happy with the island being under US control. And I was like 10, but I was like, damn, right? I was like, this is kind of
Really?
interesting, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, this is kind of
I love
interesting. Yeah. And then of course, also the 1983 US invasion of Grenada, that hit me hard. And also what hit me hard, going back to the 1979 hostage when in Iran, when those Iranian students took over the US embassy in Tehran in Iran. And that really, again, I mean, I was only 9 at the time, so now I'm telling you how old I am. But yeah, I was a kid. But what really struck me, and my father brought this to my attention, this is something that like a lot of people don't know about, that the Iranians who took over the US embassy, they freed all the Black people in solidarity with African Americans. And I'll never forget
freedom
that.
from where? Freedom from where?
From the US embassy, right? So when the students
I got you.
took over the US embassy and they claimed it was a CIA base, and of course it was, right? Right. So when they took over the building and held all those US hostages, the students let all the Black folks go in solidarity with African Americans back in the state.
I got you.
Yeah. So again,
I love it.
Go ahead.
So now your topic is, you teach what? And what's the specific topic that you thought about for today? Let me ask you that.
Oh, well, man, frankly, we just talking.
But you teach what though?
Yeah, sure. So I teach classes in African American studies, African diaspora studies, courses on the Black freedom movement, Black women, Black feminism. My first book was on Black women and the US Communist Party. And I was very interested, and in fact, I still am, as to why a small but dynamic community of Black women in this country joined the US Communist Party, and in some cases became international icons and figures in the Communist Party.
Okay, let's go down that angle. Do you have a copy of the book?
I do.
Go ahead, man. We plug in on this channel. Okay.
Yeah. And that's me. And I dig the cover, of course. So here's a group of Black folk. This photo was taken in 1932. It's a group of African Americans who visited the Soviet Union in the early 30s. Right there, that's actually Langston Hughes, the great poet. But again,
Really?
yeah, right there,
Yeah.
right there. But really, again, this book focuses on Black women. So this is one of my key subjects. Louise Thompson Patterson, an absolutely brilliant activist, globetrotter, theorist. Did some was huge in the Harlem Renaissance. She was very tight with Langston Hughes,
Okay.
Zora Neale Hurston,
Okay.
W.E.B. Du Bois. Absolutely, absolutely
Okay. Well,
fascinating. So
let's stay on that then. Let's stay
yeah,
on that.
go ahead.
What is the Communist Party in America? What was that? What's the byline to that story? And
Well,
especially with this Russia being such a topic now.
yeah. Well, I mean, well, one, it's important to keep in mind that the U.S. Communist Party is still here. So we don't want
Oh,
to
really?
talk. Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, yeah. I mean, I know
Okay.
folks, have friends, colleagues in the Communist Party. But so it emerged in the early 20th century following the Russian Revolution of 1917, which was the most important revolution, I would argue, since the Haitian Revolution of the late 18th and early 19th century. The Russian Revolution, the first time in history where a state uh, overthrew or declared itself a worker state in solidarity with the working class, with racially and nationally oppressed people everywhere. Of course, the Soviet Union claimed that in its it pledged its solidarity again with the world's oppressed people. It argued that capitalism and imperialism were doomed, and also the early Soviet Union, very interesting in terms of women's rights. It was the first country on the planet to not only legalize abortion but to provide free public abortion.
Okay.
Yeah, but of course the Soviet Union, was complicated. That, like all countries, it didn't live up to its high ideals. But what's important is that there was a small but dynamic community of African descended people globally who were really intrigued with the Soviet Union, and again, what it represented. The Soviet Union, pardon my French, scare the hell out of those Western imperial countries, the U.S., France,
Because of what? Oh, let me before you answer that.
Yeah.
Let's go back here for people who don't know. And let's say I'm one of them. Russia is in the U.S. in the Soviet Union, or is it vice versa?
I'm sorry, say again.
Is Russia is what to the Soviet Union?
Okay, so Russia was once an imperial power, right? So they had a czar, a king, and a queen, right? And the Russian Empire spanned across both Europe and Asia, right? In 1970,
okay, but let me stop you there though. Russia starts in what is now Russia, or does it take that whole area and now it's split off?
Yeah, so Russia started in Eastern Europe, right? So these are white people, these are Europeans. Okay. And like the US, Russia expanded across in this case, across Asia and into Europe, conquering various local and indigenous peoples and nations, right?
Okay.
So, but the Russian royalty was corrupt. Of course, the current queen of England, the former queen, in some ways, I'm sure it was distantly related to the Russian monarchs who got killed. But but blah blah blah. So in 1917, workers, sailors, peasants, under the leadership of V.I. Lenin, under the leadership of the Communist Party, actually first not the Communist Party, but I don't want to get too into details. Yeah. They overthrew the Russian monarchy, and then ultimately created the Soviet Union. They created a communist state based on the former Russian Empire.
What does communism mean? What is a communist state? What do they believe in?
Okay, wow, we're
I mean, is it just everybody's equal, and if you got $1, you got to put it in the pot, so everybody? We kind of hear that's their scenario.
Yeah. So like the long and short of it is, I think the way to understand communism is that it was and is a philosophy that imagined a another world is possible, a world not based on class capitalist oppression, not based on imperialism and subjugation of nations. And certainly, especially for peoples of color, they understood that capitalism, the modern economic global system under which we have the world has lived over the last 600 plus years, is predicated upon the enslavement and subjugation of African peoples, Asian peoples, and indigenous people. And as the argument went then, and still in some ways now, that again, that racism and capitalism are inextricably linked, and that in order to get rid of racism, you have to get rid of capitalism. Certainly, Black feminists have argued too that racism and patriarchy and homophobia, all these forces are linked. But the point is this: is that the Soviet Union attempted to create a socialist society, a society supposedly not based on class oppression, not based on the 1% owning and controlling the wealth over the 99%, but an egalitarian society.
Okay.
Again, that
I love that. Okay, we can dig that.
So again,
okay.
Yeah, so that was the dream.
Let me ask this question. So why Black people, the people like in your book and stuff like that, when they heard that, they said, okay, the white man over here in America is jamming us up. We can buy into that, meaning that, hey, we're going to be equal to all the other people here.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And again,
really?
yeah. But also keep in mind too, and again, these Black folks weren't dumb. They understood that the Soviet Union had its issues. They understood that, the Soviet Union was dealing with issues of racism and white supremacy. But what's important, again, right? They thought in global terms, that they understood that the Soviet Union posed a fundamental threat to the Western world. Don't forget, for the last century, right? The arguably the two most important forces of really the last century have been anti-communism and white supremacy, or in terms of, especially in this country, right? That this country, since the end of the Second World War, but even before, right? It was hell-bent, right? Hell-bent on defeating the Soviet Union.
Right.
But why? But again, and we need to understand how anti-communism and white supremacy were, again, to use one of them big Ph.D. words, right?
Yeah.
Inextricably linked. Again, see, I'm showing how I got some.
Yeah. Go ahead, do it. You're doing it.
I got some education here, right?
Yes.
That the way in which racism and capitalism went hand in hand. Don't forget, the leading anti-communists in this country were the most staunch segregationists, and because they feared that communism or socialism, if there was a radical restructuring of this society, its economy, its structure, its politics, that would benefit Black people, that would threaten white supremacy. But of course, there was also a gendered and sexual dynamic. The way in which anti-communists said, all the socialism and communism is about Black men trying to get with white women and like all this crazy stuff.
Really?
And oh yeah, no,
really?
but yeah, okay. Oh, absolutely. But again, this politics is still so much alive today. If we think about why this country is so dead set against national health care or against free loan, free public education, they say it's socialistic, it's a handout, but so often they employ these kinds of really racist tropes or again,
I got where you're coming from.
Yeah, images. Again, think about the backlash against Obamacare, which was not
a Black
contrary, contrary to what the critics said. It was not socialized care. It was basically a private insurance system that the U.S. government has to subsidize.
That's right.
That's not socialism.
That's right.
But the critics were like, oh, this is socialism, and it's Obama. And then, again, all the kind of racist and sexist tropes that they used about Obama and how that all went hand in hand. And so all of this insanity. So, I don't want to get too much on a
Yeah, no, but
tangent.
you jamming there. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
There
Go
was,
ahead, bro.
and you know the name, a black guy. Oh, I know who it is. It's Paul Robeson. They
Absolutely.
accused Paul
Paul
Robeson of
Robeson,
being
Du
a
Bois.
communist. What was that
Absolutely.
about?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think it's so important to understand that, as my dear friend and the great black scholar historian Gerald Horne. If folks, please go out and read Dr. Horne's books. He's written at least, I don't know, 45 books. Every time I talk to him, he's writing about 2 or 3 books simultaneously. I don't know, brother Brogdon, if he's ever been on your show.
No,
you gotta have him. But
I want it.
But he has argued, and of course he's not the only one.
Yeah.
But again, the importance of communism, Marxism in what we call the Black radical tradition, a term coined by the scholar Cedric Robinson. Hold up, get the book right behind me.
Yep, we hold.
So, so this classic book, Black Marxism.
Yeah.
But yeah, so cats like W.E.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, going back to my book.
Yes.
Louise Thompson Patterson, Claudia Jones, right? These absolutely brilliant Black thinkers, activists who gravitated to the communist left because they saw socialism as a critical component for Black liberation. But keep in mind, right, they always came to socialism and communism first and foremost through the experiences, through the lens of Black people, right? And many of these folks paid a terrible price for their opposition to racism, for their opposition to colonialism, for their opposition to U.S. empire. So, for example, right quick, let's talk about Claudia Jones. Absolutely brilliant. She was from Trinidad and Tobago. She was born in 1915, came from a working class family in Trinidad in the Caribbean. She came to this country in 1923. Her family, as she said, they came searching for the land of milk and honey. And what did they find? They found racism and poverty. Claudia Jones grew up in Harlem. She lived in a basement that had an open sewer, which contributed to a lifelong problem of respiratory illness. She joined the Communist Party in the 30s, became its most important Black female figure in it during the 40s and into the 50s. She didn't coin the term, but she really helped to popularize the term within the communist left, the term triple oppression, triple exploitation, right? So a term that we now, now that has become so common now through Black Lives Matter, intersectionality, race, class, gender, right? That came out of the Black left. That came out.
Okay, let me stop you there. Now, that lady you just spoke of, when
Claudia
she became big, what did she want to happen? What did she want Black people to do? More people to join the Communist Party?
Absolutely.
To elect a president, communist president, or what did they want
to happen
for the Black people?
They wanted to create a new world. They wanted to create a world where Black folks weren't getting lynched, where Black folks weren't starving to death, where Black folks weren't being marched off to war. And
I like that theory.
Yeah, right.
Like that.
Yeah, but of course, but what happened? Because and this is so apropos in terms of what's happening today.
Yes.
And my good friend Carol Boyce Davies. She's from Trinidad and Tobago, a great scholar, wrote a fantastic book on Claudia Jones, as well as a younger sister, Charisse Burden Stelly, who's also doing some great work on Claudia Jones. Because Jones was from Trinidad, because she wasn't a U.S. citizen, right? The U.S. government went after her because she was Black, she was female, she was an alien, and she was a communist. Ultimately, the U.S. government threw her in jail, ultimately deported her in 1955 to London, to the UK, because she was still a British subject. Again, going back to the fact that we're dealing with the Queen of England and all that, who just died, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
This all happened on the Queen's watch, right? So Jones goes to England, and where she becomes really involved in the African, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Asian scene. She mentored a new generation of activist scholars, radicals, and she passed away sadly at the age of 49 on December 1964. And guess where she's buried, brother?
Where?
She's buried to the left of Karl Marx in Highgate Cemetery. So Karl Marx, the so-called father of modern communism, the German philosopher, who is buried in Highgate Cemetery in London. I've had the opportunity to visit the
Okay.
grave.
I love it.
Right? She's buried to the left of Karl Marx. And as Carol Boyce Davies argues in her book titled Left of Karl Marx, that the geographic location of Claudia Jones's grave to the left of Karl Marx both speaks to, again, both to Jones's, the physical location of the grave, but also the way in which Jones's politics were to the left of what Karl Marx imagined in terms of bringing in issues of race and gender, and again, understanding how race, class, gender, capitalism, imperialism operate. She was absolutely brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant.
All right.
But,
a lot has happened throughout our history. The black folks said, we're trying to find a way.
Yes.
And communism sounded like a way.
Right.
But the communists, and we hear this now, were extremely mean towards black people. Is that the case? At least they are in Russia. We hear a lot of stories, and I was just looking up some where they beat Africans and stuff like that. How does that jive?
Absolutely. Well, again, keep in mind. So, first of all, modern day contemporary Russia is not the Soviet Union. Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. The Soviet. So again, there's the Russian Revolution of 1917. Actually, there were two. There was an April Revolution, which brought in a kind of liberal democratic government, and then in October, that's when the communists took over. And then in 1922, they formally established the Soviet Union, which ultimately collapsed in 1991. And then since 1991, there's Russia again. And there's no question that what we've seen over the last 30 plus years since the fall of the Soviet Union and across the Eastern European bloc, we've seen a resurgence of racism, fascism, what have you. Now, again, that's not to say that racism didn't exist in the Soviet Union. It certainly did. But what we've seen in this rush to capitalism, again, we've seen a real kind of bubbling of fascism, white supremacy, what have you. But again, so getting back to your question, yes, one of the criticisms of communism going back to the early 20th century and Marcus Garvey, the Jamaican black nationalist, of course.
Right.
I've got the Jamaican flag behind me, and of course the red, black, and green flag that Mr. Garvey invented. Right. He always charged that, look, all these white communists, they talk good, but at the end of the day, there's still white people who are concerned about white people.
Yes. Okay.
And certainly, of course, there was and is a degree of truth to that certainly there was political opportunism among the Soviet, in the Soviet Union, white communists to use black people to advance their own interests. But really, again, I think what's important to keep in mind is that black folks who joined the Communist Party or who were intrigued with communism, Marxism, the Soviet Union, they weren't stupid. And they also understood that the Soviet Union constituted a force, right? An oppositional force to that challenge the power of all these Western governments who claim they were free and democratic, but of course, Britain, France, Spain, the US, all those countries, their foundations, right? Their foundations are on the blood, sweat, and tears of African descendant people, indigenous people, Asian people, and the other people that those countries colonized. Wow. So yeah. And again, I mean, I'm not the first one. I mean, folks have been saying this for centuries, right? And I think what's so fascinating about Black folk in this country and beyond, and this is a point that I often make in my classes, right? So again, to your viewers, right, to understand Black freedom in this country and beyond in global terms. Right. So for example, during the War of Independence, right? During the War of Independence of this country,
That's
more
1776, or that which one is that?
1775 to 1783. That's good. Yeah,
Okay.
man. You got
Okay.
it. You got it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
hey, man. So I'll give
Okay.
you an A for that.
Okay.
Is that
Cool.
cool?
Cool.
All right, cool, cool. So more Africans fought with the British than they
Right.
did with the Americans. But of course, it makes sense. Why? Because the British offered freedom to Africans who fought with them against the US. Now, of course, we know that the British had their own agenda, and we know that African people weren't stupid. They knew, yeah, you know, these white folks, these British were saying they're going to free us. We're not so sure, but you know what? We are going to, we still are going to pursue our own line, our own agenda, and we're still going to try to be free by any means necessary.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, let me
yeah,
ask you
yeah.
this.
Go ahead, brother.
What is the best case scenario for Black people in history? What I mean like that is, when we talk about what they faced in Africa, what they faced, let's say in Africa, let's screw that. What they faced in America, what they faced in Brazil, what they faced in Mexico and Asia. Is America the best case scenario outside of Africa for what Black people have faced?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, that there's really no place. And
really?
Yeah, that I mean, here's what I'll say, and here's where I thought you're going in terms of what I see perhaps as the most exciting moments in Black history or in freedom struggles, at least over the last few centuries. And for me, it would have to be the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1804. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It was the most radical revolution of its time. So, you know, we so often talk about the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. Talk about the French Revolution, 1789 to 1803, 1804, right? But the most radical.
What does radical mean when you say it in this?
And well, again, thanks for the question. Don't forget, the root word of radical is root. The root word of radical is root. And the term is so often misused to say like, that it means like extremism, right? So like, you know, how
right. That's what I would think.
You know, and like these Democrats will say, oh, these radical extremist Trump people, right? No. So in some ways, that's a misuse of the word.
Okay.
What radical? See, brother, we are breaking it down here.
Yes.
Right. So what radical means, right? It means to use a West African derived term, getting down to the nitty gritty. Okay. Getting down to the root, right? Okay. The root cause, the root structure, the root issue, the root problem, and what formerly enslaved Haitian people did is they imagined the unimaginable. They did the impossible. They broke their chains, right? It was the only time in world history where and when an enslaved people successfully overthrew their masters, although one could debate exactly how successful they were in light of how impoverished Haiti is, but that's due as a form of punishment for what those enslaved African people did, right? So these enslaved African people, it was a grassroots mass movement, right? Very much inspired by voodoo and other African cosmologies, spiritualities, worldviews, where Black folks were like, I might be enslaved, but I'm not a slave, right? And that's why I keep saying, and that's why, and again, you know, we as scholars and people say enslaved people. And by saying enslaved people, you are describing a condition. You're not saying that's what they are, right? And again, don't forget, what's the root word of slave? The root word of slave is Slavic peoples, right? Yes, because the Romans enslaved people from the Balkans, right? So for example, the root word, right, again, of slave is Slav. So in Spanish, esclavo, in French, esclave, in Portuguese, esclavo again, right? So, and of course, in English, slave,
I'm with you.
Right? So again, these self-emancipated, and that's again, self-emancipated folk fought for their freedom. They wanted to overthrow the plantation system. Don't forget, Haiti, or what was once known as Saint-Domingue, was a French colony, right? On the western side of the island of Hispaniola, on the eastern side, of course, is the Spanish-speaking country of Santo Domingo, right?
All right.
And yeah, so these Haitians, these Black people, right? They overthrew their masters. Haiti was the most profitable sugar producing county on the planet. It was
Really?
the jewel. It was the jewel of the French Empire. And then again, enslaved Africans overthrew, and again, it all started during or following a voodoo ceremony in August of 1791, actually launched, and it was overseen by a voodoo priestess, by a young Black woman. Again, the importance of Black women to revolutionary change and struggle. And within a few weeks, all the biggest plantations have been burned down. And don't forget, the French sent 15,000 troops. The Haitians, pardon my French, whooped their ass, right? And of course, including the was it son-in-law, brother-in-law of Napoleon. The British sent 20,000 troops. The Haitians whooped the British ass. And then lastly, Spain, they sent troops to quell the revolution and to try to gain control of this county, and Haitians whooped Spain's behind. And why is this important to not only the Haitian history, Caribbean history, world history? One, so Haiti becomes a symbol, right, of possibility, a symbol of revolution. And just right quick, also in terms of indigenous history, don't forget, Haiti is an indigenous, was what the indigenous people, the Arawak, called Haiti, which means, of course, land of tall mountains, right? So, and it's really telling, it speaks volumes that in formerly enslaved Africans, when they created their new country, Haiti, the second free republic in the Americas, it gained its independence on January 1st, 1804, right? They renamed the country Haiti, right? After, again, an honor and recognition of indigenous people, their history and their legacy. But in terms of the US, why is this important? Because Napoleon had hoped to rebuild a continental empire in North America, right? I'm sure that you recall from, right, so-called French,
sure.
Louisiana and all that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
Napoleon realized and said, look, the game is up. I lost Haiti. That was the most valuable county, a French county in the New World. Fine. You know what? We'll sell Louisiana to the US in 1803 for approximately $25 million. And of course, the French and the US had no right to buy or sell land that belonged to indigenous people in the first place, right?
Right.
But what's important, right, is that when the US acquired Louisiana, so the western half of the Mississippi River Valley, that really put this country, the United States, on the road to becoming a continental empire, right? So again, how the local, what might seem local, is always inextricably linked to the global. And this is why all the brothers and sisters, young folk, old folk, queer folk, straight folk, whoever you are, right? You need to know the history. You need to be up on current events, and you need to understand that the past isn't in the past. The past is right here now. There wasn't some kind of invisible line drawn. Again, brother,
I got you, man. You jamming.
But hold up. I'm not going to ask you, how old you are, but I think we're probably all,
right.
But, so young folk today think, I don't know, like somewhere around, I don't know, 1965 or 1966, or I don't know, like a few years before I was born, and maybe like around when you were born is when like all this stuff ended. But in terms of racism and colonialism and empire, but if we throw that argument out, and again, understand that we are just in another chapter of a book that got written about 700 or 800 years ago, and that totally changes things. And lastly, and this might be a good place, and lastly, brother, and this might be a good place to stop and taking it way back. And this is a lecture I gave in class on Monday. It's called "To be human is to be African." To be human is to be African. And I think the subtitle is the early history of humanity or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
If we understand, right, first and foremost, that Black history didn't start in slavery. We've already said, right, that the word slave comes from the word Slav. That's the Slavic peoples, right?
Right.
This idea that Blackness and slavery are synonymous is a recent historical phenomenon linked to European imperial capitalist expansion.
Okay.
If we keep in mind, right, that everybody on this planet right now, everybody, you, me, all your viewers out there, right, that everyone on this planet is related to one woman, to one Black woman who lived approximately 150, 175,000 years ago, right? That we begin to understand that, again, Black history didn't start in slavery.
I love it.
Black history began in Africa, indeed with the dawn of humanity, because again, the species from which modern humans evolved first emerged at least 6.5 million years ago in the Horn of Africa, right? So again, this notion,
I love it.
you know, that somehow Black people,
I love it.
yeah, it's crazy.
I love
It's crazy. I mean, oh brother, I wish I had the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I got two more to kind of let's say almost close this out, so to speak.
Yeah.
What was it? What was the end result? What was the best moment for Black people in communism, if there was a best moment?
That's a great question. The best moment. That's a great. You know, in some ways, I would argue that perhaps that best moment has yet to come. And
in communism.
What I mean by that is is like the ideas and dreams, possibilities that Paul Robeson, W.E.B. Du Bois, Louise Thompson Patterson, William Patterson, Shirley Graham Du Bois, Eslanda Robeson, Esther Cooper Jackson, folks who were in the Communist Party or were tied to the communist movement, their hope that we could live in a world without poverty, a world without war, a world without gender oppression, a world without racism. That world has yet to come. But truly, brother, this is what helps to keep me going and helps to get me up in the morning, is that I truly do believe, and again, it's not just gonna happen, it's that we're gonna have to make it happen, but that I truly do believe that another world is possible. And I should also note that, again, yes, we've talked a lot about communism, but we can't talk enough about Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, Marcus Garvey, Louise Little, Amy Jakes Garvey, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And again, we also need to understand that, again, many folks who were in the communist movement, you know, came out of the Garvey movement, or again, the ways that, again, the centrality of Black nationalism to all Black politics. So yeah, brother, I mean, truly the struggle continues. La lucha continua.
I got one more.
Yes,
what
man.
is
Go
the
ahead.
best?
Yes,
what is the best moment? What is the best that Black people can live under?
The best. I mean, the best.
I don't know. Government. I don't know. But when we tried everything, we tried communism. We fought our way to get away from white people, like they did in Haiti, and even still, they came back and said, "Okay, y'all got that, and we're gonna isolate you, and you all ain't gonna have nothing because you're not going to be able to." So is there a utopia somewhere?
Well, and you know, it's a great term that you use, because without question, Marxism definitely was and is a utopian project. I would say much of what we talked about in terms of Black politics or the Haitian Revolution were utopian projects that, again, imagining that another world, a freer world, is possible. I think what I would say is this: I don't think history isn't over. And I don't think we have seen the best possibility, not only for Black people, but for all people. And, to quote, and just right quick to paraphrase what Dr. King said, he said it's nonviolence or non-existence. I think we are, as a species, as a human species, we are teetering on extinction, be it from climate change, war, and all those issues. White supremacy, gender oppression are central to all those issues, because who are the people who are suffering the most? They're African people. They're people of color. What continent is going to suffer the most from climate change? Already is. We're not hearing a lot about it in this country if you aren't really in the know, but of course it is Africa. So oh yeah, absolutely. Climate change is devastating the continent. So it truly, going back to what we just said a few minutes ago.
Yeah, sure.
Human history started in Africa, and human history is going to end in Africa. And meaning that we were born in Africa as a species, and our ultimate future destiny, our survival or death, hinges on Africa. And I think that might be a good place for us to wrap it up.
Yeah.
What do you think, brother? Is that good?
Yeah, that's it, man. We went around the way and got a lot out. And like I said, offline and online, he can please come back. We're gonna talk some more, because you got a lot you can share with that passion.
Well,
Everybody go ahead.
Yeah, and just right quick, as I say to my dear friends, so you can buy me a cup of ice water for next time. Is that cool, man?
Yeah, I do that.
That's my payment. Is that cool?
And so how about this? How do people get your book?
They can order, the book, again, Sojourning for Freedom, was published through Duke University Press. You can get it through Amazon, although I'm not a huge fan of Amazon. I think they're awful, but that's a different conversation. Or through your local bookstore or vendor. So please buy it. The book is done well. I'm proud to say it's really foundational. Sure. Yeah, it's foundational to
you have other books beside that too?
I'm working on. I'm in the process of completing a book on Garveyism in the Midwest.
Okay, I like that.
And I'm very excited about. I'm very excited about that.
Do you have a website?
I don't have a website per se. I probably should. Maybe I'm about. My kids. My kids say I'm, a little bit antiquated, but at least I can use email, right, brother?
Yeah, there you go. So we're gonna put what we can to do to follow you in the description. Everybody. Oh my God. Told you he's an expert. And he come from my town, and he got all that experience, that knowledge, and then he picked a topic that most people don't think about, talk about, and that's communism and Black people. Black folks, we try anything. Maybe is that analogy? We'll try. You say enough that might make you reasonable and believable. We'll give you a shot at it. Because like you said, when the Black people fought against the British and the British lost, the British said, we're gonna give you freedom. So they end up sending them to Nova Scotia.
That's right. And Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago.
So there's always some kind of shot, because it's always a matter of hurting us. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is about how they can hurt us so that they can be on top of us and people like us. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he expressed to us today. Again, everybody hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations, hit the like button on this video. Hit the notifications bell, tell somebody about Strong Inspiration, get his book. And then that'll give you some more insight into it. Yeah, let's do that. Let's figure that out. Let's get that book. Let's stay in touch. And to you, my brother, I say this, and I mean this with all sincerity. I'd love for you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing. I love the guy you become.
Thank you.
An expert, and you telling it correctly. And in a classroom, I'm sure most of the students are white, where you enlightening their mind, and maybe we'll get to one of them for them to think differently.
Well, thank you. But I should thank you. Now I should know that many or that my courses in African American studies, those classes are predominantly black. So, oh yeah, so yes, I'm
Yeah,
reaching
but
a
there's
lot of
some
black
white
students.
kids that take that class who
Absolutely,
got a consciousness,
absolutely.
and you opening their
Latinx
eyes,
as
and then
well.
I know they go back home when they drinking beer and stuff like that and get to telling what you said. It might and it you know goes around and around that way. We'll be
Indeed.
back in touch.
Yes,
Thank
man.
you. Appreciate
Thank you, brother. Thank
All
you,
right,
man. Peace.
Yeah.